Hi, I'm Govindh Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 315. And today we're stepping into something every entrepreneur feels, but not everyone fully names. The moment you realize that you don't really have to win alone, and maybe you were never meant to. Our guest today is Brandon Bagley, a leader who has built his entire career around elevating people, empowering teams, and proving, not through theory, but through lived experience, that the strongest organizations are the ones built around this idea of us and not this idea of me. You might start thinking and recognizing places in your own business as you listen where you've carried the weight entirely on your own shoulders. Places where you thought you had to be the hero. Places where letting others in would have made everything easier and better. What Brandon shares today has the power to shift how you lead, how you collaborate, and how you grow. As you hear his stories, you might already begin imagining the moments in your life where we could have been greater than me and how that could change everything. So take a breath, settle in, and get ready because the wisdom on this napkin might just be the reminder you didn't know you needed today. We are stronger together. Let's dive in. Brandon Bagley, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So you shared on your napkin, and I think it's significant because you have one word bigger than the other word. So one word is me, we, and you've got a greater than symbol pointing at me, which is much smaller. So we is greater than me, and underneath that you say stronger together. Why did you share that with me?
Yeah, for me, it's been something that's has driven me ever since I started in as an entrepreneur in my business 18 years ago. Uh, Entrepreneurship can feel really like a solo pursuit at times. You're off on your own, but it's really a team sport, right? It's something that you have to find the right people to surround yourself with. Otherwise, it can get very lonely, right? Heard a comment once who was at a keynote speaker for a conference, and they asked the question of the Alpha Graphics group, who as an owner, who are you accountable to? And one of the answers from from the crowd was nobody, and it can feel like that sometimes as an entrepreneur and as an owner. But I challenge that individual. That's exactly the wrong feeling. You have to find people to surround yourself with that you can still be accountable to, even if you are the leader of the organization. Probably even more so because you're the leader of the organization. One of the things when I was doing my napkin, the we is greater than me, kept coming back to was the other analogy, which is there's no I in team. Right, we've all heard that one. Very very popular, and well, I think it's correct in how it's used a lot of times. The reality is there's lots of eyes in teams, right? Every team is made up of a lot of individual eyes, and the eyes are important. The eyes are the skills, the personalities that are brought to the team. But the key part is when that I transitions into a we, right? When you have all the eyes working together and rowing in the same direction, together.
Yeah, it's really great. And one of the things that I think is really interesting is how you challenged the person within that group in the Alpha Graphics group, who you accountable to. You suggested that you still need to be accountable to some people. When I was early on in business, people would say, "You have no boss," and I would be like, "What are you talking about? I have more bosses. I'm accountable to the bank. I'm accountable to every one of my clients. I'm accountable to every one of my team members, and like I have more bosses." So, so how do you feel about that in the sense that leaders actually have more people to whom they're accountable? And the moment that we realize that, we lead the way for we, right? Like
Correct.
if because if we make it about us, I'm not accountable to anybody. I'm the boss. that attitude spreads around the company, doesn't it?
And that's exactly the transition, right? And I think the problem is, I've seen there are many entrepreneurs that do get stuck in that I, right? That I'm there, I have to be the decision maker. And yes, it oftentimes starts with an I, right? It starts with you running the business and starting the business, by yourself and having to make all those hard decisions. But you have to quickly be able to get to a point where you're surrounding yourself with the right team, and right network to be able to support you, so that's not just the I. That's the key.
I like that. It starts with the I. It's really important because but there is a transition because we do as entrepreneurs say something like, and we've all said some version of this, I can do better. I can fix that. That person doesn't know how to do it. I know a better way. And we're problem solvers. Another napkin early on was you have people say you have to fall in love with something to, he says entrepreneurs actually fall in hate with something and they want to solve it. So I like that idea. So there is a starting with I, but there has to be a quick transition, isn't it?
I think if you don't, I think you get stuck in you've almost bought yourself a job, right? If you're stuck in that mentality of, I have to be the decision maker for every process within the building, within the company. My opinion, you've done it wrong, right? Certainly you start to lack flexibility in your life, and I'm all about work life balance, right? I maybe not the typical entrepreneur. I'd sacrifice some success for the balance of my life to make sure that I have time for family, and vacations, and time away from the office. But the only way that I can do that is because I've surrounded myself with a team, that's able to handle things. And it's not just about having the right people in place. It's about then entrusting them with the ability to make decisions while you're gone, right? I just coming back from a 6 week stretch of not having been in the office, full time, which is odd for me. Had a vacation, and then traveling to Denver for some trips, for meetings, and then back to Boston for meetings, and then jury duty, right? And I never once worried about, are things going to be taken care of, because I've focused on the we of my team. And for me, in Alpha Graphics, it goes a step further. It steps outside my building as well, right? It's the we of the other owners that I have access to in this business to learn from and to be accountable to. One of those trips I was talking about is a focus group that I go to of other Alpha Graphics owners, and it's essentially a de facto board of directors. Right, so it's something I've opted into personally, and this is, I think, my third in a row that I've opted into. It's a 2-year commitment to go and basically open up everything about your business, which can be scary as an entrepreneur, right? To share all the intimate details of your business. One of the processes, you host the other owners in your location to interview your staff. Nothing more nerve wracking than having other owners interviewing your staff, right?
Yeah.
And again, not about them necessarily, but it's about what they perceive of your business, right? What are the biggest issues in your business? But there's also nothing more valuable, right, than the ability to have people who are in the same shoes as I am, to help make decisions in the business, to help bounce ideas off, and most importantly, help keep me accountable, right? If I say I'm going to do X, keep me accountable to doing that, and hold my feet to the fire to make sure I'm moving forward in my business.
So let's talk about this. You started in business 18 years ago. Um, what were you doing before, and what called you? What called you to go into business? And was it so you're a franchisee of Alpha Graphics,
Yep.
right now? Is that
Yep.
what the business was at the time? So tell us about 18 years ago. What happened? How'd you get into it? How'd you get started?
Sure. So came into a business knowing absolutely nothing about the business. And that was scary, right? So my experience, I have a science degree. Graduated at a time that I couldn't find a job in the area, in that degree, and decided to go and help out my in-laws to work for them for what was supposed to be 6 months, turned into 4 years. And realized in that time that I liked business much more than I ever did the sciences. I always joke that I haven't used my 4-year degree a day in my life. The reality is I use it every single day. The learnings of going in a lab and testing processes and trying to get a better outcome. yes, it's different in business, but they're doing the exact same things and applying the same concepts, right? So, long story short, we decided to sell that business, and was looking for something else, and we were actually customers of another Alpha Graphics at the time, and I went and sat down with with the owners of that location that we were customers of. Um, and they had been in this business for, I think at that time, about 20 years, maybe a little bit longer, and couldn't have spoken higher of the network, the opportunity. I looked at several other things as well, and just fell in love with the idea of this business where you really are working with other businesses. I consider myself business curious. I've never met a person that I can't ask questions about their business. And yes, I may be trying to talk about what we can provide them as a service, but I'm going to ask them questions that may have nothing to do with ink or toner on paper, just because I'm interested in everybody's business and their experiences and why they do what they do. For me, a big part was joining a franchise brand, right? So the ability to come into a set of standards and way of doing things, and it's not like McDonald's, right? From the standpoint of, there isn't the exact same piece of equipment and, one recipe that you follow. So it's not that kind of model, but it's a model that gives you the guide rails, if you will, of how to run a successful, printing and signage company. And the ability to have access to other peers in the network, is one of the greatest benefits. And one of the things that I believe so heavily in, and really, which kind of was the genesis of the we is greater than me, is the Alpha Graphics network, right? We can go out and try and do it every day by ourselves. The Phoenix market, when I started, there were 15 locations here in the Valley. I didn't come in and say, I'm going to go and do this my own way. I learned everything I could from those owners. And
Right.
I can tell you there are other owners that came in after, and begrudge those people their success, and the things that they'd put in 20 plus years work on, and said, I'm going to do it differently. I'm not going to ask for your help. Long story short, they're not here anymore, right?
Right.
The ones who embrace the, hey, I want to learn from you. We're peers. We're not competitors. That we are truly stronger together. Those are the people who end up being the most successful. And I can tell you right now, there's any number of probably 50 franchisees that I could get off our call here, pick up the phone, and they would drop everything to help me if I had a customer that needed something near them, or just needed to ask them a question about something. And I wouldn't get that if I opened Brandon's print shop, right? I wouldn't have that ability to have that built-in network of peers and resources.
I think you talk often about the peer support you get as being part of a community, and I think that's really powerful. And look, if you're listening and you're not a franchisee, or you are, either way, there are business networks available in every town, every city, and every country. There are organizations like entrepreneurs organizations, YPO, Vistage, Tech. There are lots of different types of
Absolutely.
organizations available for peer groups, and you can even check with your chambers of commerce. There are places to go to be around peers. And one of the things that I think is really a big leap that happens to a lot of people, and it sounds like you did it early, which was talking about what you don't know with the group. A lot of people like to go to those groups and talk about what they do know, but the real value is showing up with questions about what you don't know, isn't it?
100%, right? Every one of these focus groups that I've been a part of, the key part of the key benefit is having people from all different aspects of ownership, right? Maybe they've been in for 3 years and are still relatively green. Maybe they have a top 10 center in our Alpha Graphics network. Everybody brings something, but you only bring something when you're willing to contribute your own expertise. But then also, as you said, open up and be honest about the things that you're struggling with, right? If we just go out and put on the happy face that I think oftentimes we as entrepreneurs try to do, right? The everything is fine, it's all going to be okay. you're not really pushing yourself, and you're not really gonna, going to grow. It's only when you really show those weaknesses in areas where you may struggle. It's uncomfortable, sure, but that's where the greatest benefit comes out of, is when you're able to say, hey, here's an area that I'm struggling with. And I'm sure you've struggled with it also. So how did you get through it? Or if you haven't, already, maybe you're going to, and how can we get through it together?
Yeah, and so there's a couple things about that, right? You talk about um, approaching it with, here's some areas that I'm struggling with. Sometimes people start off and they're out like a rocket ship, and that's great. But being curious in that environment about what other people are doing can keep you on that rocket ship. It's fuel for your rocket ship, right? Because you might be able to figure out a bunch of stuff, but coming in and understanding what the blind spots are from other business owners, other entrepreneurs, is really helpful. So
I
approaching
mean,
it with
we
curiosity is a really big part of that, isn't it, Brandon?
absolutely. I mean, we all have our blind spots. We all have our areas that we thrive in, right? Well, you can be, very successful at growing sales, but are you growing profit, or are you just growing sales?
Yeah.
And if it tends to be the person who's that sales minded individual, focusing on that top line. They may not be the same person that has the financial aptitude to really dig in and say, great, I grew my sales 30%, but I didn't make any more money. So what was that worth, right? It looks good when you get an award for sales, but you didn't get anything, more to take home for yourself or for your team, at all. So was it really worth it?
Yeah, and you certainly didn't build the muscle that allowed you to be not worried to leave the office. Sales without profit is just it eats at an entrepreneur's belly, right? Because you're just
100%.
busier without making any money, and we can't get away from the office in that environment because we can feel that something's not working right.
And I think oftentimes that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That's the I can tell you, I've spoken with another off groups owner, and had made the comment asking them if they're going to our annual conference. This was a number of years ago, and the comment was saying, I can't even get away for lunch, let alone step out for a week for conference. And this was a top 20 center, right? Should have plenty of time, in my view, to be able to dedicate to stepping away from the business, because I think that's critical, right? It's getting some distance away from the business, surrounding yourself with your network, whether that be an Alpha Graphics network, or whether that be one of the other numerous groups that you listed, but choosing to step away from the business, not being stuck um, inside the business. I joke oftentimes, it feels like if when you're stuck in that, you might as well just put on a firefighter's hat, because all you're doing all day is running around putting out fires. And oftentimes you're setting more of them than you're putting out, by being in the office, right?
Right, right. That's the problem with running around with your hair on fire.
Yep,
Everything else
absolutely,
catches on fire.
absolutely.
So the idea also, I don't wanna drop this. You talked about being relatively green, and how sometimes when people are relatively green, when they're entering networks like this, they don't feel like they have anything to share or anything to add, but being green tends to mean that you've got energy and enthusiasm, and that is, man, that's high octane stuff in some of these groups, and the vets wanna be around that. Isn't that
Absolutely.
true?
Well, it's not just the energy and the optimism. It's sometimes it's a separate, it's a different point of view to look at things, right? Just because you're doing things and have always done things that way doesn't mean it's the right way. I always joke, my team, there's one thing that they can tell me that is absolutely the wrong answer, right? If I ask why do we do things this way, if the response is it's because we've always done it, we're not thinking, right? The only acceptable response is it's the best thing we know. It's the best way we know how to do it today. Doesn't mean that tomorrow we're not going to iterate and find a different way to do that and improve it. But yeah, I think coming in with that green energy, that's when I started, completely new. I brought in some people who certainly knew the business, but I was able to challenge, everything that we did. Okay, do we do that because that's the right way to do it, or we do that just because that's the way it's always been done? And the innovation in a brand like Alpha Graphics oftentimes comes from the network itself, and pushing and collaborating together, and really getting together, and finding out what is that next thing or improvement that we can make to our processes.
I really like this idea is, like, why do we do it this way? Is it the best thing or is it a habit? And we need to really be discerning about that. That's a really good point. Let's go back to, we talked about, running around with your hair on fire just makes everything catch on fire, and I can't get away from lunch. I remember when I joined, almost, too long ago to even talk about, like 16, 17 years ago, I joined EO, and when I did, I remember the forum training was 4 hours, no cell phones, meeting. And, of course, I was a green entrepreneur, I was tied to my phone, I couldn't be away, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna be in this room full of CEOs, and they're all gonna be without their phone for how do they operate?" And my first after I got out of the vomit in my mouth over the fear of it all, the next thought was, "Yeah, I'd like that. I'd like to be able to be away from that." How have you always had that sense, or was that something you learned along the way?
I think I had that pretty early on, right? I think it was always, even when I had a team of only 3 people, with my first location, it was never a question for me of, will you go to the Alpha National Conference? It was, I'll go. Yes, it means I'm a week, out of the office, but that week out of the office, work, collaborating with your peers and learning new things was what energizes you, to gets you back that energy and that enthusiasm to come back. Oftentimes, when you're just in the grind, you lose that, right? And the ability to step away is what makes that so important. And I think that gets lost so often when you just stay in that grinding for too long, right? You got to take time for vacation or time for stepping away and having collaboration.
Yeah. And, when you think about staying in that grinding for too long, one of the things that I also think about is I remember a long time ago, I was talking to a group of entrepreneurs, and one person in particular was telling me about how busy they were and how important they were and how they were doing all these things and solving all these problems in their business. And I listened and nodded, and my question to them at the time was something to the effect of, "Does that cape ever get heavy? Like being a superhero, like all the time, does it ever get tiring? Does it ever get heavy?" And that was the start of a transformation for that person, and they told me about that years later. But you're talking about the same thing. Staying in the
Yep.
grind just gets heavy. I mean, you're
Yeah.
just involved in everything. You raise the bar for yourself and for your team when you walk away. Isn't it interesting? The first time when you do that, and I experienced this is, I went away and there was a problem and they solved it, and it was a mutual realization. A, they realized that they could solve it, and B, I realized that they could solve it.
And
That I
they
wasn't
may
as
not have
important as I
and they
right?
may not have resolved it the exact same way that you would have, and it may not have been a perfect result. But guess what? That ability to empower them and trust their expertise is huge, right? I think one of the hardest things sometimes, as is that transition from the I to the we, is letting go of the ego, right? Asking for help, in my opinion, is a sign of wisdom, right? The ability to say, hey, I can't do it all. At some point you have to find the other people. Doesn't mean I couldn't, theoretically go back in my business and run just about any piece of equipment in the business and get product out. I am absolutely not the best person to do that, and I'm just going to mess up more at this point than anybody else, right? But you have to empower your team. You have to trust them, let them have ownership, let them make mistakes. I've always said my team is never going to get quote in trouble for making a mistake, right? Where we might have a conversation is when it's the same mistake over and over again. Then we're not learning from mistakes, right? But it's, same like tell my kids, mistakes happen. That's part of growing and learning. It's when we fail to learn from those mistakes that it's an issue. The big things. I mean, you can't scale a business alone, right? You have to surround yourself with people who make you better, and the ability to continue to lead. In order to lead well, you have to take time for yourself. You have to be able to have that balance, and you need to be able to surround yourself with the right network of individuals.
So let's talk about trust. And you talk about this over and over again. You've said it, I don't know, several times over the course of the conversation. And I think a lot of us as leaders want to be trusted by our teams, but you seem to understand that trust has to be given by leaders before it's received. You have
100%.
to give your team trust before they will trust you. Isn't that
Yes.
true?
100%. I think you can't expect the trust day one, right? Yes, there's a certain, expectation of, you're leading the business and you want them to trust you. But if you don't give that trust to your team, you're not going to be successful, and you're certainly not going to get that trust back in the long.
What changed for you that first time when you stepped away, went to the conference, and came back?
I think it was that realization that, everything is going to be okay, right? And even then, right, 18 years ago, we weren't as connected as we are now, right? We're probably too connected right now, and that's part of the problem, right? We feel like we can be in the office even when we're not in the office. Um, but the greatest growth in my business has been my ability to say, hey, I'm going to go to meetings, and I might not check email all day. I'm going to have it out of office, and if there's something urgent that somebody needs to deal with, they're going to know who they need to contact. But I'm not going to be stepping out to take a phone call. I'm not going to have to worry about that because I've got it taken care of behind me. I trust the people to do that. And a lot of that has been the coaching from my peers in the Alpha Graphics network, right? I with anything, when you're in a network like Alpha Graphics, you have to give, before you get, right. You have to be willing to give, if you're green, your energy and enthusiasm, or your fresh perspective. But one of the greatest things that I appreciate of my peers is, even those that I said that I was a customer of, that got me in this business. I always joke, they hate to hear me tell them this, but they've been in this business longer than I've been alive, and they would still do anything to help anybody, right? And the reason they're so successful and have been in this business so long is because of their willingness to drop anything for anybody, and help and provide guidance.
Um, that's awesome. You also said that when you first stepped away for your first conference, you had one location and three people, right? Where are you now, Brandon?
So I've got 4 locations. We run a hub and spoke model. It's kind of an odd situation for an Alpha Graphics, but it worked really well for us. 4 locations with 13 employees. It had never intended to necessarily have multiples, right? Alpha Graphics isn't the type of franchise where you must have multiple locations to have a good business. There are many franchises where, yeah, if you don't have 10, you're not making ends meet, if you will, or you've just bought yourself a job. Alpha Graphics isn't that way, so I never really had an intention to. But after my first one, opened from scratch, about 9 years later, had the opportunity to purchase a neighboring territory and open that one from scratch as well. And then a year later, someone asked me, "So when you gonna open, any additional?" I said, "Never. I'm not going to." 3 weeks later, the opportunity presented itself, and I acquired 2 existing locations. So, it works really well for us, and have a strong leadership team here. My 2 managers that I trust with anything, right, and really hold down the fort. When I'm not here, and again, I never have a concern of are things going to be handled they may not be exactly the way I would handle it, but are they going to get it done for our customers and for our other employees 100% every single time?
One of the things I think is really impressive about what you just shared is, you very subtly talked about a 400% increase in your overall size and scope, and that's really great, and congratulations on that.
Thank you.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about your whole story, and it's everywhere in what you do, is, um, you wanna give to your network, you wanna give to the community, you wanna give to your team, you wanna helping people is at the core. I don't hear you walking around with a whip, um, whipping people into profit. You're whipping people into helping people, helping each other, and isn't it because that's your nature? You're not faking it when you're helping your team. You're not faking it. So it has to be genuine. You can't fake people that you care about them. You have to actually care about them, don't you?
You have to care, right? And I mean, there are times where candidly, I've felt, and some of my peers have pushed back on me that, that I spent too much time outside my business helping other peers, and I always have to come back to them and say, but that's actually what drives me forward, right? And that's really the genesis of the we is greater than me, right? Is me wanting to work on something bigger than my four businesses even, and helping our network, grow and thrive, outside of even Arizona where I'm at, is what drives me in my business also, right? It's that passion to be able to help other locations, and other owners and peers. I've got another, actually an employee of a location that just reached out to me and wants to come in, and spend a few days here, coming up, and happy to host them because, we're likely going to learn something about how they do things, and their hope is that they're going to learn, some things about how we do things here. And, I think we are somewhat, sometimes feel unique, and, my peers always joke that. I take more vacations than than most, and I think that's a good thing, right? It means I've built the right team and surrounded myself with the right people, and have empowered them to make the decisions, and own the business when I'm not here.
I love that. There's a good friend of mine, Michael Walsh, likes to talk about something called the freedom framework, where all entrepreneurs really are building a business where they want freedom in the business to work on the things that they want to work on, freedom from the business that they can step away and take a vacation, take a break, and freedom because of the business to have a life for their family and themselves that they
Absolutely.
can enjoy, right? So freedom because of the business. And it sounds like you're living all three of them. But I do want to point out that the thing that you've lit up most about is when you talk about helping others, and you literally lit up like a light bulb
Sure.
when you talked about helping others, and even talking about hosting this person that's gonna be coming from a different company. You're truly a team player, and I appreciate that about you.
Thank you. It's something I've always had a passion for, and part of that is because it's been given to me in so many ways, right? Because 18 years ago, there were other owners who were willing to do the same, and help me. It's something I'm super passionate about. I always joke, right? I could have opened Brandon's print shop. I'm certainly glad I didn't, right? Some of my best friends in the world are other Alpha Graphics owners across the country that I talk to, honestly, sometimes more regularly than I talk to people who live in the state as I do, right? Just got off the call, this morning with my focus group, with five other owners from across the U.S. Right? Again, keeping each other accountable, keeping each other engaged in the business, and it's huge for me, right? There's a giant value to, joining a network, where you have other people who are doing the same thing that you're doing, and growing together. Now, I will say, just joining a network, just like anything else, right? Joining a chamber doesn't mean you're going to get a lot out of it. You have to be engaged. There are plenty of Alpha Graphics owners that, bought a business that basically should be Brandon's Print Shop or whatever their name is, because they aren't taking full advantage of the resources that are there in the network. I always joke, certainly, we have royalty fees that we pay to our corporate office, and while I expect them to do something for those royalty fees, if I got nothing else other than the interactions that I have with other owners, and the access to my peers, I still think I might be coming out ahead on those royalty dollars. Doesn't mean I don't continue to keep them accountable to make sure they're delivering on things that they're responsible for. But, the value of the network, and the value of having, peers around you, is just can't be calculated, in my opinion.
And that's the other part of the stronger together element in yours, right? You get out what you put in, you have to put it
Absolutely.
in first. Like, just like trust, you have to put it in first. You have to if you want something from a group, you have to give to it before you get from it. And
Yep.
and if
Absolutely.
you do that with sincerity, if you do it waiting with the other hand,
Right.
it's not gonna work. But if you
No.
do it with sincerity, it comes back in spades. Brandon, uh, th I really appreciate your experiences, what you've shared, and that brings us to a point where we evoke a great napkin that was given to us by a great friend of the show. His name is John Rulin, 11 years ago, where he shared with us what you appreciate appreciates. And his idea was when you appreciate somebody, when you celebrate who they are and what they are with gratitude, they appreciate and value not only for themselves and for their community, but for everybody, including yourself. So, um, He started a movement of gratitude with that, and we're paying forward his memory because he suddenly passed away about a year ago. And part of paying forward the gift that he gave us is asking every one of our guests, what are you, who do you want to appreciate? Is there someone you want to shout out today?
Yeah, I don't know if it's anyone in it's, one name specifically, but it's every one of those, of my peers that's taken time out of their day to answer the phone, to have a hard conversation, right? Honestly, some of the conversations are like therapy, right? Business owner to business owner, and just being honest with each other. So every member of my focus groups that I've been in, and the other members of, the Phoenix owners group of, of Alpha Graphics owners, who have given tirelessly over the years, and frankly, fueled that passion in me of giving back to our network and growing our network.
I love that. Just a final thought. Recently, I had a friend of mine suggest that instead of calling it, can we have a challenging or a hard conversation? He says, can we have a powerful conversation? And that's just a different reframe. And I really enjoyed
Absolutely,
that. I thought that would resonate with you.
definitely does.
Thanks, Brandon.
I appreciate it.
Well, that was Brandon Bagley. And what a powerful reminder he brought us today. We is greater than me, stronger together. And as you sit with this idea, you may already notice places in your life where your leadership or your business where this truth has been waiting for you. Moments where letting people in would have lightened the load. Moments where collaboration could have opened doors that you didn't even realize were closed. Brandon showed us that when people feel seen, supported, and included, everything changes. Momentum grows, teams rise, and the work becomes something bigger than any one person could carry alone. Here are a few key takeaways from today's conversation. Collaboration is a strategic advantage. Psychological safety unlocks hidden ideas. Shared ownership creates shared momentum. Leadership grows through connection and not through control. And stronger together is something you build on purpose. As you reflect on what stood out to you, you might begin noticing which part of Brandon's napkin is speaking to you right now. Is it the we? Is it the me that you've been carrying too long? Or is it the possibility of becoming stronger together? Wherever you land, take a moment and write your inside out on a napkin. Yes, a real paper napkin, and share it with the world using the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom because someone out there might need the reminder that you've just discovered for yourself. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a leader who's been trying to do it all alone. You never know. Your share might be the moment their we begins. Thanks for listening. And remember, small wisdom written simply can move entire teams and change the world. And sometimes the biggest of breakthroughs begin on a napkin. Make it a great day.